Hey everyone, how about we add one more video to the list of videos out there talking about a Ford Fiesta and its problem, I guess, that it has with this little purge valve. Checked out a few other guys talking about how they changed out things, and looks like the correct way to do it is to get the part that goes all the way down below, and then there's a connector in the back, and you just change out the line and everything, switch it out, and it's done. Well, none of the auto parts around our area could get me that. The only thing they had was this little deal right here, this little solenoid purge valve thing. That's the only thing they had available, 25 bucks or whatever. But you couldn't get it with the lines. So I finally found one guy talking about how he changed out just that part, and looked like it was a bit of a fiasco. And so, of course, God bless America here, we all think we got a better idea and a better way to do it, so I thought I can do that better than that guy. And so here's my video talking about my way of doing it, which is obviously way better than the last guy's video. Yeah. So anyways, I'll just show you what I did, and you can determine whether or not this is how you would change it out when you're sick and tired of not being able to get parts, and mechanics are backed up for months and all that stuff, and you decide, well, I'm gonna just change it out myself. This is your option, one of the many out there. So anyways, the one that I got from the parts store didn't come quite designed like the one from the OEM. This is how the OEM one was. It hooked onto this little bracket coming out there with a rubber mount. This one did not come designed that way. It sets different, so just to hit how I'm going to mount it, I'm actually just going to secure it to the mount by going through the mount and around the previous metal part right there with just a hose clamp probably, or maybe some heavy zip ties or something, and that'll secure it there. To get to the part where you're looking at what is almost a finished product, the last thing I will do on this is I'm going to just put a couple hose clamps on here. But here's how I did it. The old purge valve thingamajig sat in here like this, and you can see on this side it broke some of the housing off here and some of the housing off here. I was going to cut it off with a little saw, but then I wasn't sure if I was going to get any shavings down into my tube, and I really just didn't feel like screwing around with it. And so I had this little plumbing tool for cutting PVC pipe and PEX tubing and stuff like that. And so it actually worked pretty good. I just put it up in here on the old one, got it saddled up in here, and sheared it off. And my idea was I wanted to leave a part of the old valve in the line, because what it looked like the issue was is guys couldn't get these little heat shrink things. So the OEM one had like this little heat shrink clamp deal on it. So if you cut it off, you still couldn't get it to slide off, and then guys were mangling it all up and yada yada yada. And so I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut this valve out of here, and I'm going to leave a piece of the old valve stuck in my tube here, and then that way I'm going to slide, if I slide this piece of rubber tubing over it, that'll have some strength inside this hose to clamp down onto, and so then it wouldn't want to crush this tubing. Now the tubing's fairly rigid. I don't think it actually would have been an issue. I think you probably could have squeezed on it, but I knew that if I left a piece of the old valve in there and then squeezed down on that, I would definitely not, have any issues with it collapsing or leaking. So I ended up looking around the shop, and the only thing I could find was a piece of 5/16 fuel line, and it's a little too small. If you were going to go to the parts store and buy this, I would get probably a 3/8 and maybe even a piece of half, but I think 3/8 would get you. And so then you could just cut yourself a little 1.5 long piece of 3/8, and so then you've got the nipple sticking out of the new valve, and then the little piece still stuck in the line here. And so then all you have to do is slide. I had to, with it being that small, I put a little lube on it just to see if I could get it on there. 5/16 worked, but it was a fight in order to get it, but it did work. But anyway, slid the line onto the tube first, left my little piece in there, slide my line onto the tube here, and then it was a fairly easy slip of the 5/16. Oh yes, and then of course somebody's got to walk in the shop while you're in the middle of shooting a video, so then you can't remember where you left off at, and I don't feel like editing a video, so we're just going to go from where I can remember I was at. Anyways, 5/16 tube, hose clamp, 1.5 inch long, slip the tube onto the old hose, slip it onto the valve, fasten it in right there. Little wire connector came in the backside here instead of where it was before. But to be honest, if I would have had a couple hose clamps sitting in the shop, the correct size ones, it probably would have been a 30-minute job at the most. And so the big thing that I don't know is whether or not if you could cut those, if them little shavings in there, you know, with a saw, them little shavings could cause trouble in here. So that's the route I went. $25 part from the auto parts. And the old valve, just get it out. There's a couple pieces, obviously, leftover pieces, but should work pretty good for you. And it was a whole lot simpler, and it was the part that I had available. So I'll slide a couple hose clamps on here, snug it up, and project finished.